Right, two things. Number one, the markets were spooked because the whole package spoke of instability. It spoke of a lack of credibility, a lack of trust. The uncosted nature of it, the balancing of it made the markets think this lot don't know what they're doing. That was a £45 billion tax-cutting package, of which the 45 pence rate was £2 billion. So a relatively negligible constituent of the overall package. £45 billion worth of tax cutting is now a £43 billion worth of tax cutting without the Chancellor or the Prime Minister having established where the money is going to come from. So the U-turn, according to Paul Johnson of the Institute for Fiscal Studies, is itself essentially going to have no effect on fiscal sustainability. Point number two, and this is a bit of a pet subject of mine, but rarely is it going to be more pertinent than it is today. Newspapers, you may not actually know this, but newspapers sometimes change on the same day. It very, very rarely happens. Occasionally, if you've got an amazing scoop, you won't put it in the first edition, because if you put it in the first edition, everybody else can get it out in time for their second edition. Do you see what I mean? So imagine that it rolls off the presses at midnight and then another one rolls off the presses at 1 o'clock. And by the time the second one has rolled off the presses, it's too late for any of your rivals to nick your story and stick it on their own front pages in time for the next edition. The Daily Mail's front page this morning, and depending on where you bought your newspaper and what time you bought it, I don't, for example, know if these would have reached Birmingham yet, but the Daily Mail's front page this morning originally read, "Fury as Gove stokes Tory 45p tax revolt." I'll read that again. "Fury as Gove stokes Tory 45p tax revolt." And it went on to explain how Truss's allies have accused the former minister of serial disloyalty. They've asked, isn't getting rid of 1pm enough for him? That's such a sort of boneheaded contribution to public discourse that you don't even have to wonder which MP that was. I'll tell you off the top of my head, it was almost certainly Ian Duncan Smith. So the Daily Mail, the House Journal for the Conservative Party, in its first edition this morning, was essentially going after Michael Gove and describing the Conservative Party as being furious about criticism of the 45% tax criticisms of this tax cut. You then open the paper, page 6, Kwasi, we must stay the course. This is this morning's Daily Mail. This very morning, Monday, October the 3rd, 2022. Kwasi, we must stay the course. Chancellor adamant his plan is only way to stop the UK's managed decline. It's the only way to stop the UK's managed decline. Someone called Daniel Johnson writes, ditch the grenades, Michael, unity is essential. And then you turn to page 9 and 10. Truss, I failed to prepare ground for mini budget, but she insisted she will not change course. Their political editor writes, naked criticism of the new PM did not land well. So that's what he was filing last night. All of this criticism of the Prime Minister did not land well. This morning, Kwasi Kwarteng is saying, well, we've listened to it and we've decided to abandon the plan. So somebody's lying to you. Probably both of them, to be fair. Daily Express, front page, Kwasi, no more decline. We must stay the course. Kwasi Kwarteng will today say, we must stay the course and stick to his plan to deliver economic growth. That's how bonkers it is. That's what our country has now become. Not only at odds with reality, but at odds with its own reporting on the day that it was reported. Because by the time you went down to the newsagents this morning and picked up your Daily Mail, perhaps you saw the second front page that they printed, which reads, are Tories on brink of 45p tax U-turn? The same day. The same newspaper, in the same country, as two ex-ministers lead mounting revolt and Whitehall Insider tells Mail row is distracting from mini-budget's benefits. So in the space of 10 minutes, fury as Gove stokes Tory 45p tax revolt to are Tories on brink of 45p tax U-turn. We move effortlessly from Truss's allies accuse former minister of serial disloyalty and ask, isn't getting rid of 1pm enough for him? In the same newspaper, on the same morning, in the same country, to as two ex-ministers lead mounting revolt and Whitehall Insider tells Mail row is distracting from mini-budget's benefits. Now, how do you make sense of stories like that when they're in the same newspaper? How do you do it? You can't. Because they're making it up as they go along. There is no semblance of consistency or even policy, which is why I think this morning the decision to do the U-turn has made everything worse, not better. Not least when you take into account Paul Johnson's analysis, the head of the Institute for Fiscal Studies, his analysis that because the actual money involved in the 45p tax cut is 2 billion out of a pot of 45 billion, it's not going to have any impact at all on fiscal sustainability. So why has he done it? He doesn't even think he should have done it. He still thinks it's a brilliant idea. The more this programme goes on, the more convinced I am, not only that this is, if it makes any difference at all to the bigger picture, it's going to make things worse, but also that the catastrophe, we're not even at the beginning of the end. I think we're at the end of the beginning of this catastrophic